See on your side.
Welcome to Wednesdays with Willa. This is my weekly podcast show that airs on Wednesday mornings at 10 a.m. Eastern on my Facebook page, Willa White Medium. It also goes out on my YouTube channel as well as the Lilydale Assembly Facebook page. This is year 9 of episodes of Wednesdays with Willa. So I have so many past archived videos of the show that you can enjoy to your heart's content. Many people tell me it's a treasure trove of information relating to spiritualism, mediumship, healing, faith, family, and more. I would encourage you to go to the YouTube channel because after a while, Facebook dumps out the live
Yeah,
videos and
they
you
do.
can't find them again.
Yeah.
So that's going to be your go-to place. Although I really appreciate you if you can like and share and subscribe and follow and all those good things because it helps us to keep spreading the word and help educating people about these important matters. And I want to make sure that you know that I am so excited about the holidays coming up. I want to wish everyone a wonderful holiday season if you're celebrating Christmas and onward. So glad that we can spend this time together. I have other archive videos of past Christmassy holiday shows that you can enjoy too if you go to my YouTube channel and type in holiday or Christmas. There are a lot of wonderful things that we've done over the years. And I am thrilled to have back on my show again, Ron Skowronski. Hello, Ron.
Hi, how are you?
Good. I'm so delighted because Ron and I always have a great time
Yeah.
chatting. And those of you who don't know who Ron Skowronski is, he has been a long time popular inspirational speaker here at Lilydale among our churches. And we dearly love his take on understanding of spiritualism. He shares about spiritualist history in the summer. Some of you may have been on some of the historical walking tours in the summer during the season program. You probably recognize Ron from there. And he's done a great press show on Florence Shin with me.
Lawrence
Um,
Scovel Shin,
yeah,
absolutely one of my heroes.
absolutely. So we're going to be talking more along those lines today in our very special episode, The Power of Thinking into Your Life. And I'm really looking forward to our spiritual conversation today. So, what should we start with first?
Um, if I may, um, you brought up the idea of the holidays and whether we're celebrating a happy Christmas or getting ready for the New Year's and Hanukkah and Kwanzaa. There's just so many different cultural and religious holidays. I think somebody quoted me or read somewhere that there's like at least 14 to 17 distinct holidays, or as they are called, holy days for a bunch of different brothers and sisters on our planet. And a group of us were we clergy types every so often get together for coffee and fattening food. And we were talking about the upcoming season. Of course, a lot of our uh, discussion happens to fall into what I call strategic planning, not just services, but how do you deal with congregants who are, or just anybody that comes by you and is having a very tough time, is not marinated, if you will, in the holiday spirit and is in some cases very depressed or worse. And we talked about that. And we said, ultimately, during the course of this time of year, we seem to have developed kind of I'll use the word that we use in metaphysics, consciousness, where we really create within our own mentality. Uh, I will call it a fantasy world. And I mean, we watch the Christmas specials, and I'm watching How the Grinch Stole Christmas and the Charlie Brown Christmas and Miracle on 34th Street. And what we often don't intellectualize is that the reason these films or they make us feel good
Yeah.
is that they're message films. They have a message.
Mhm.
And the overall message in most of them is be kind, or overcome your lower, baser self. and reach to a greater reality that will help you rise above, whether it be feelings of depression or resentment or anger, what have you.
Mhm.
And a lot of times, in fact, I wrote this in a newsletter a while back for in my own congregation. I said, we do this thing, and people say, "Gee, I wish it could be Christmas every day," or "I wish it could be we could feel like this every day." And my question is, why don't you? And because we still believe, many of us, many of us in this world, that life occurs to us, where in point of, again, metaphysical truth, life occurs through us. And whether I've been teaching the gospel of spiritualism, or uh, I'm now have been for, my God, 30 years now, ordained through the United Centers for Spiritual Living, or what we used to call the Science of Mind, or United Church of Religious Science.
Mhm.
They get bored. They change names every so often. And or now in my work as working with and representing the Unitarian Universalist Church, I find that the same messages are the same. That whether they be culturally wrapped in one package or box or not, what's really significant is what's the message. And ultimately, at the end of any given day, I come to the conclusion that it is, as it says in Christian scripture, it is done unto you as you believe.
Mm.
That life does not occur to us as though we're, in a sense, either victims of life or rewarded by life. What we fundamentally expect in the heart of our being is ultimately what we get. What's problematic, though, is no matter how that message comes across, whether it be through Dr. Ernest Holmes of religious science, or Florence Scovel Shinn of, I think she was kind of an independent, but I
New
think
thoughts.
New Thought, or even Divine Science, which,
Mhm.
by the way, Emmett Fox, who's very popular in most metaphysical circles, including the spiritualists, he taught under the banner of divine science. But the message, you unscramble it a little bit, and you find the message is the same. The more you realize that you are valuable, worthy, that you are, for lack of a better term, a willing agent of the divine, a willing um, example of what we call, we say it in religious science, there is only one mind, one mind. That is the mind of God, if you use that term, God. Or you can use the term universal consciousness. Spiritualists call it infinite intelligence. The point is, we have in our humanity, a finiteness that kind of ultimately gets to a point where we recognize that there is this infinite consciousness. But if you said to me, well, could you describe that? No, not. I mean, there are some who've been very eloquent in many circles who can. And even if you read, I'm very impressed with the work of Marianne Williamson, who, by the way, is a unity minister and has written a lot of wonderful, what's the word I'm looking for? Commentaries, if you will, on A Course in Miracles, which I highly, highly, highly recommend. Um, the message continues to be fundamentally rock solid. What you think into life is what life will give you back, not as reward, not as punishment, but as a means of a reflection that you are part of the one mind. And therefore you function mentally and ultimately, which can be even used as a synonym for spiritually, you function in such a manner that you will get what you put out. In scripture, and this is something that's fascinating to me, because when people got out and started studying about, the secret, which is the law of attraction. Spiritualists have been teaching the law of attraction since probably, I don't want to say 1848, but
Practically.
actually, practically even before that, with
Yes.
the work of Andrew Jackson Davis.
Because he was prior.
And but the thing is
And
that
Swedenborg.
Emanuel Swedenborg, Manny, as I like to call, no, but yes, it's important to learn a little bit about Swedenborg, because he's still, to some people, an enigma. But on the other hand, he came out with some fascinating points. You don't have to agree with each and every one of them. I surely do not. But that's not even the point. Uh, you study the totality and try to, pick and choose what makes the most, what I call spiritual common sense. And
I think your point is, though, that each soul has to do their own seeking.
yeah, critical thinking, critical.
Yeah. And they can sift through what is there and say, yes, I feel on deep level that this is truth.
Yeah, for you.
Mm-hmm.
And what's interesting even more than that is this: when we are called, I say it to, pardon me, when we're called to live our lives, to investigate, to learn, to grow, to evolve, uh, there is a real, there are two dynamics that need to be addressed. One is the vast majority, have this notion, and it's very subconscious, which means it projects itself into almost everything we do.
Mm-hmm.
And the consciousness, or that particular consciousness, says there is a right belief and there is a wrong belief. And there are consequences, there are rewards for right belief and consequences for bad belief. Nothing could be further from the truth. Nothing. And the second aspect of that, again, going back to Christian scripture, when we learn it is done, ask and ye shall receive, seek and ye shall find, knock and it shall be opened unto you. A word that is often misrepresented or maybe even completely ignored is ask, believing, and ye shall receive. Seek, believing, and ye shall find. Knock, and the believing, and the door shall be made wide open unto thee. We have this tendency that if we believe, and there are many religionists, and I give them my deepest respect, believe as you choose. I wish you well. But it has been my experience in, boy, as he say in Yiddish, now it's just a little bit over 50 years of studying, looking, and analyzing all this. I've come to the conclusion that the people who are most best served by life are the people who understand the principles that we speak of. It can begin, like we were talking earlier when we were getting together to kind of plan out what we were going to chat about, with a study of what I call the traditional, and it's not just spiritualists. There are other groups that have done this too. There's usually like a set, and I want to say it can be 12, it can be 24. I've read different books on the so-called natural laws, and people read them.
And there's
like
the Hermetic laws.
Exactly.
That's what you're talking about.
Exactly.
But there are about 76
Yeah.
spiritual natural laws. And maybe this would be a good time for me to mention, I have a class that I will be teaching online starting at the end of January. And you can find information about that on my website, willawhite.com, on the online classes page. And it's a 6-week Zoom journey with me and other people who are wanting to study spiritual natural law. It's 6 weeks, so each week we will be covering some important aspects of spiritual natural law, and the title of it is Living the Laws. Because here we are, we're talking about theory.
Yeah. We're
The
intellectualizing it.
intellectualization of spiritual natural law and how we think and how the mind helps us to evolve our life, but how do we put it into practice? So while I do agree with you about the idea of belief,
Right.
there is a divine right practice and divine right intention that
Absolutely.
we
Absolutely.
utilize when we are expressing and working with living the spiritual natural laws.
I go back to um, two things. I go back to a teaching that I appreciate more and still have the utmost difficulty in working with, and that is the notion that my truth need not be your truth, and I can attain extraordinary benefits and positive results from so-called my truth, even though it may not be yours. Belief ultimately is what creates reality. Um, in the
And we choose our reality.
Exactly,
Law of creative reality.
and and in the I'm a bit of a sci-fi fan, and in the movie, the new version of Dune, they talk about this a little bit, where I'm probably paraphrasing. It's what I tend to do. Mind is the builder, and mind is the destroyer. Or Star Wars, the Force.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You can choose to use the Force for so-called positive, growth-provoking, wonderful purposes, or you can use the very same Force, which is neutral, for aggressive, unpleasant, and ultimately extremely destructive purposes.
Not as neutral.
Stops being quite as neutral then. And if we study any kind of history, even if we eradicate from it any kind of religious or spiritual dimension, and we begin to analyze, that old, well, it's like an old joke where, your mom says, you've just broken the vase, and she goes, what could you have been thinking? Well, not much, Ma. Or there was a subconscious urge to do something, and subconsciously I may have even I probably knew the result,
You know better,
but I
Ron.
did it anyway.
Ron, you know better.
Not always. And so what's interesting is, in the very beginning of anybody's spiritual journey, when they start realizing that they are personally responsible for their life, and that they need to study the various teachings, whether it be spiritualism or so forth. And you see, for example, I remember doing this. My God, there's, whatever, a dozen or more so-called natural laws. I approached them in the same context that I was taught to believe in any religion, that there were the rules of the road. And if you broke the rules of the road, there would be consequences. But if you didn't break the rules of the road, there would be rewards. That's not a horrible dynamic.
I think that's a nice simplified way of
Yeah,
looking at it. Yes.
and so in studying, uh, like, I can think of just one just off the top of my head, I remember it because maybe it made more impact than the others. The law of polarity, the law of remuneration, the law of there are and a lot of times, unfortunately, because writers have different styles and so forth, they could even be named different things. But when you read the definition of what they accomplish, you can, and those are the things that I used for years and years and years, hopefully to become a more progressive, better human being, or a better soul who has chosen to have a human experience.
Some air quotes going on there.
But uh, but here's the thing, like we were talking, about a few minutes ago. ultimately you can come to the point where if you start looking at things like Paramahansa, no, I'm sorry, forgive me, I'm quoting Yogananda, Krishnamurti, or even you get Ram Dass, Timothy Leary. I'm just naming a few off the top of my head, who began to talk about consciousness in a more wide perspective. It doesn't mean that the people who are doing it the way that they were traditionally taught in spiritualism are wrong. I know people, dear friends, I love them to pieces. They are what I call traditional Orthodox theists. And whether they be Catholics or Episcopalians or Methodists or Presbyterians, they follow the rules of the road. And I find that they try to be loving to themselves. They try to love other people. They try to do good. They try to improve so that as they approach the change called death, they can say, you know, onto the infinite universal consciousness, I come to you with an open heart and clean hands. If all we're talking about in the context of living your life in a little bit more of an intentional way, and hopefully taking some of the burden off of I always say if you thought a little bit less about consequences and accepted yourself as worthy, uh, teachable, guidable, then not only will your spiritual guides and your angelic loved ones find it easier to work with you because you have, but everything will work better because you have set I'll call it, if I may, a higher template, a higher expectation
Yes.
by having a higher self regard and self esteem of self. Um, and so when people say, oh, gee, I wish this feeling could last forever, it can. But somewhere along the line, there are beliefs that have to be analyzed or, looked at, if you will, and say, okay, what is this? What's the production? What has this produced in a worldwide cultural dynamic? We still are in many instances, very spiritually primitive beings, because many times people accept the notion somehow that it's almost, and maybe I'm overstating this. It's another one of my tendencies. God versus us. And when I was studying, and spiritualism was extremely, I can't stress it enough, important to teach me that, to put it in the kind of colloquial vernacular, that God was for me, could
Yes.
never be against me. Because how can God be against his self, herself, itself, the divine consciousness? If you can identify and unify that you are part of a great, positive, loving, giving force or consciousness or substance, and then begin working from that template.
Right.
You could have Christmas, if you will, every day. Would be nice. I'd like extra lobster tails, but that's just me.
We all want something.
Yes, we do.
So it all begins with how you decide you're going to believe about your world.
Right.
And your deeper connection as a soul with the divine.
Absolutely.
So often I feel that what we're doing as spiritualists is we're educating people that first and foremost you need to cultivate that relationship that you have with the divine.
Without a doubt.
So that's the first place.
Yeah.
As much as we say, yes, you can communicate with loved ones in spirit, and yes, we want to communicate with each other as beings, we ultimately need to start there, that relationship with the God source of all. And then once we feel that loving connection there, we can extrapolate that into the deeper associations of our life in the living, into our work, and in all interactions with the planet.
Yeah, because ultimately, and you know what Willa has just shared is the I'll call it the prime directive.
Mm.
It's how do you view your relationship with that which you interpret as God? Are you agnostic or even atheistic, and you maybe call God, the acronym good, orderly direction? Do you believe that, regardless of the belief, does it ultimately lead you to a more positive sense of self acceptance? And to that extent, also self reliance.
Mm, mhm.
I still can't tell you how many people I deal with in any given day that somehow feels that they are powerless, that they have no right, if you will, to feel empowered by a power that is greater than self. And I often I've asked people, they in the liberal churches especially, we still use the term worship. And I've asked people, I said, what? Whom? What do you worship? Why do you worship? And I prefer to use the word devotion or devotional, uh, because worship sometimes in many people's minds can mean groveling, a lack of self worth, a lack of self confidence. And we turn to that so called power greater than ourselves because we say, you know, I am unworthy. In fact, I can name you a variety of traditions I've been involved with over many, many years. And that seems to be the mantra. I am a worm. I don't deserve this. But if you got a minute, could you please help? And you find that the metaphysicians, the Ernest Holmes, the Emmett Fox, the Florence Scovel Shins, they are appalled by that kind of
Yeah, there's not
consciousness.
the supplication
Yeah,
energy of
there is, for example,
it's the
when
wrong energy of
yeah,
it.
we're going to hopefully get together, whether it be around the family turkey or the family tofu, this coming Thursday, and we're going to express gratitude. Gratitude is significant. It is incredibly significant because gratitude means I am grateful for what I have, and I look forward for greater things to help me grow and progress. Gratitude doesn't mean, oh, I'm a worm, I'm not worthy, but you took care of me anyway. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Um,
Well, the gratitude is important.
no, but that's
Gratitude
my
is good,
point. Yeah,
but it's that kind of strange, stressful
yeah,
energy.
it's a
It's
gratitude born of feeling that small, not a gratitude of unity with that force,
right.
with that power, with that. At the end of the day, if you want a great definition of God, comes out of Scripture. I'm sorry if some of you don't like that. God is love, and those who choose to love will truly know God. End of sentence. Period. If you ultimately can begin to do that, and I have friends of mine who do that because some of them are Buddhists, Tibetan Buddhists, and so forth. The reason we admire these people is that regardless of what happens to them, they are centered in goodness. They are centered in a consciousness that they, in of themselves, have always been, will now, and ever shall be just fine. And unfortunately, too often, we in the West, it's a very tough road to hoe because we have all kinds of expectations, all kinds of teachings, which many of which we have. Well, I don't want to say we don't know where they come from. We know where many of them have come from, and they're plain simply something I like to call wrong, because they uh, extenuate and ultimately point to the person and say and well, they do say to them, in of yourself you are nothing, and uh, that's not humility. Bear in mind, whenever you think that way, you're not being humble, you're being humiliated. I don't know about you, but the God of my understanding, it doesn't have to be your understanding, but my understanding would never humiliate me because it would never humiliate itself. And that's the question you ask if you feel in a context of self-identification and self-acceptance. Is there something about me that I don't like? Okay, but that's not God. That's a part of you that is learning how to eliminate that dross, send those negativities back to their native nothingness, and ultimately accept a vision and create a reality where you can realize with Yeshua, the Galilean, that that not only it's done unto as you believe, but when he said, "He that sees me sees the Father; he that sees the Father sees me," wasn't speaking, my opinion, and many other metaphysicians, to exalt himself, but was giving a worldwide lesson for ever and ever. Amen. This is true for all of us.
Yeah.
All of us. And ultimately, if we want to have Christmas every day, if we want to have that spirit of unity, of givingness, of that spark of joy when we give something and don't expect to get it back, mm-hmm. It's called spiritual discipline. Yes. Pardon me, spiritual discipline. I myself, even after, I joke about, I've been doing this for 50 years. I really, really, and please believe me, I don't think I've even barely scratched the surface. That's not a negative thing. It just helps me to recognize there's so much more to learn. And the key is open-hearted, open-minded, positive, moving forward. Mm-hmm. And my usual Christmas gift is your mantra for the year 2026. I'm in the right place at the right time, moving toward my true place and something better. Yeah. Amen. Amen. If you do that a couple of times a day, preferably upon arising and just before you go to sleep, if you come back to this particular program, which I hope we'll be, doing again next year around this time, I would be fascinated and so grateful to hear your success stories, because that simple mantra is your formula for changing your consciousness, which you must do if you want to change your life.
Mm-hmm. That's such a you can tell Ron really understands about these concepts, and I do feel that it comes about as you're living it and breathing it and stating it and restating it. And don't you feel the big issue for so many people here is that you have to almost be able to simultaneously, in a paradoxical way, understand that God is never changing.
Right.
In the love, infinite supply, always available, you can always go to, and there are no issues in that relationship with God unless you're making them.
Well,
and then the other part of that is that as that unchanging love that exists eternally and infinitely within that divine, we are always in a state of transformation. Yep. So here we have the transformative power, the power of renewal, so that we can have Christmas every day. That we have to
with lobster.
With lobster, we have to, on a conscious level, until it becomes the true default mode for us.
Yeah, it's a lot like computer programming.
So I don't feel that we should. Don't feel bad if you're like, I can't grasp this to some extent and have it all right now. There is always room for learn. There's more to learn and grow and be, and that we are supposed to be in that transformative mode to build that affinity and the relationship with the divine that is always there.
Yeah.
And that's where spiritual natural laws are so great, because
yeah.
we always know where to go back to for the truth
And you
and the
can,
direction.
to this day, I mean, it's kind of funny. I, not in preparing for this, but just my own studies and so forth, I recently came across some old papers literally yellowing, which doesn't make me feel good, but yellowing.
You dipped them in coffee.
I dipped them in coffee. It's as simple as that. And I read them and I thought, oh my gosh, these were, this was my underpinnings back in the day. And I recall, and you've heard me remember her before, bless her heart, bless her soul, one of the greatest women in spiritualism alive today is the Reverend Marilyn Autry, who resides in Florida. I think, I don't think she'd mind if I said it. I think she's 92. If I got that wrong, forgive me, Marilyn. But what she has done to simplify and to make natural law accessible, not just to the spiritualists, but to anybody who's interested in the subject, is wonderful and very clarifying. But I read through some of that. I go, oh my gosh. And you go, here I know all this quote metaphysics, and sometimes you got to go back to square one and forget all the what I call high church, the highfalutin, concepts and so forth, which can be, I call it pretzel logic sometimes because you kind of you twist yourself up in a pretzel over it, and you go back to some of the basics, and you go back to like even reading. I love not Gandhi, forgive me, the Dalai Lama, because his basic attitude is be nice, be kind. If you can't be, please get out of the way. And people go, well, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Yes, it does. Because if you've decided I'm mean, ornery, and nasty, I don't think I can do this just for today. Tomorrow is a new beginning. Tomorrow is a new day. And that's what growth, well, and my God, we see it in not just religion, so to speak. We see it in Alcoholics Anonymous and Narcotics Anonymous and all the other self-help programs, because they're born out of the concept of life is what you expect it to be. Life is what you put into it. And and you might not be able to start with your conscious thought because that may be as muddled as mud, but you can. We have there's an old kind of a axiom: you can fake it till you make it. You may not be able to embody the truth at that moment, but you live it. Somebody is mean, you want to be mean right back. You don't. You choose consciously.
You choose the law of grace.
Thank you. No, seriously, thank you.
Yeah.
You choose the law of grace, and you go, whoa. Now, at that moment, you may not go, whoa. You go, I should have split his skull, but you didn't. And that's a beginning, because again, it's an aggregate. The world, the universe, everything, it builds on top of itself, and consciousness is what builds reality. If we want a different reality, I'll just spend 10 seconds here. I've had a lot of people come to me. They're terrified of what's happening, national politics and all the rest of that. And I'm not here to be political. You wouldn't want that. But I will say this. I do believe, just as it says in the scripture, that God, good, orderly direction, the force, infinite intelligence, is not mocked. Therefore, that universal consciousness, that universal love that Willa just spoke of a couple minutes ago, all of those things are there for the taking, are there for to be accessed. And if we make the conscious choice to do that, we can turn anything around for the good of everyone. Bear in mind the law of reciprocity.
Yes.
What you sow, you reap.
Mm-hmm.
Now, many people have ignored that, thinking that's for somebody else, can't be me. Guess what? It's for you. And if you sow animosity, hatred, take your pick, rather than so love and forgiveness and restorative justice. Um, the results will, as we say, speak for themselves. It's again stated in the scripture. You see a tree grow, and the fruit that grows from that tree, in a sense, speaks for itself. If it's good fruit, you've planted good seed, you've tended the garden, the tree, whatever. But if you've just willy nilly, done it with lackadaisical, a lack of care and attention, that will speak for itself too. Because the Lord of all, God, causes his righteous rain, RAIN, to fall upon the just and the unjust. The goodness is always there, showering us with blessings,
Mm-hmm.
accepting and acting upon those blessings.
Yeah, so there is a part where you have to be active. Active.
Yeah, there's an old, the title of a book, you can't, Robert, I think it's Robert. Anyway, the author, his last name is Zinn. Forgive me, Howard Zinn, political author. You may not like him, but very liberal. And he wrote a book called "You Cannot Stay Neutral on a Moving Train." And he's right. People have to make choices, and they have to realize, and that's where we are as a human species making some horrible choices because we're not realizing that we are reaping what we've been sowing. And again, it will take that energy, that reciprocity will work itself out to the absolute last neutron. And again, never to punish
Mm-hmm.
and never to reward. It establishes stasis or balance.
Right.
And as I say, with that kind of an approach, I like to believe that I would at some point, when it's time for me to call it a day, if you know what I mean, that people will say he was part of the solution rather than choosing by his thoughts, words, and deeds to be part of the problem.
Right. And so when it comes to this power of thinking into your life,
Right.
it first helps to know where your thoughts are, where you're allowing your thoughts to go, what you allow your thoughts to rest upon, and then how those thoughts go into words and go into the actions. Can we talk a little bit about that?
Well, it's kind of funny. We know these things that we've been speaking of on a deep, deep, deep level, and you see it even manifest itself in some of the commercials that you see by, technically they're produced by something called the Ad Council, and they're run at 4 o'clock in the morning when everybody's asleep, but me. And the one commercial that I think this even came out maybe in the late 70s, and the message was real straightforward. A word can hurt harder than a fist.
Hmm.
And I'm like, whoa. And, it's kind of like that old thing, that other commercial. Of course, they have a cast iron frying pan, they put an egg in it. The frying, this is your brain. Or no, this is your mind. This is your brain on drugs when you drop the egg in the frying pan. But it's these kind of visuals or even strong, a word can hurt harder than a fist. And I, even to this day, if I'm dealing with people, and I have a tendency, I know I do, I can be very blunt. I try to be diplomatic, but I can be very blunt. And there have been a few times that I've been too blunt. And I've recognized that either I've hurt somebody's feelings or I've been offensive. I am not just ethically or morally obligated, but I'm spiritually obligated to seek that person out when I can and to strive to make amends. Not for their sake. I mean, sure, I want them to know that, I would never, consciously go out and hurt somebody. But on the other hand, I did what I did. I have to take personal responsibility and strive to make amends. When Jesus said, go, your sins are forgiven, what he was saying, look, don't be so hard on yourself. Forgive yourself. You made a mistake, but do yourself a huge favor. Don't do that again if you can avoid it. So that's what it's, go forth and sin no more, because sin simply means missing the mark. You've made a mistake. Not the end of the world. Don't make it the end of your world. Don't let it define you. How many people do you know? They've made one bad judgment or something, and for the rest of their natural lives, they have defined themselves by that one bad judgment. And others have allowed them to do it. Mm-hmm. They don't say, it's, I know it was horrible, and, but let's, that's what restorative justice is all about, by the way. If kinder, gentler, but it starts with your heart. It starts with your soul. It starts with your mind.
And so to that end, when you're talking about that one thing, or maybe it's a few things that accumulate within a person that they feel shame or guilt about, there is a usefulness to shame and guilt in the sense of they need to know what they did was wrong. Absolutely. And that there are consequences for those behavior for themselves and or others. But then the usefulness of this is to say, I don't want to do that again. This is how I want to proceed.
Exactly.
With virtuous action, word, deed, thought. And this is how I will work to maintain this. And it's a constant practice. I think the other thing to keep in mind with this, when you are working with thought, it's a constant weeding out process.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. The garden of the mind.
Well said.
I knew you'd love it.
I thought so.
He's a funster. So you're constantly having to weed this out until there aren't as many weeds popping up. And there aren't as many, I've got this garden a little bit more set. But we have to have that fencing. We can't just say, all thoughts, y'all come. Other people's thoughts, y'all come. There has to be the boundaries that are set within the mind.
Absolutely. And when you're studying, and many of you probably are, when you're studying mediumship, it's development. The reason it's called development is it's not just suddenly going to boom happen. I mean, there are natural mediums that have spontaneous psychic experiences, but I'm not talking to that group. I'm talking to the infinitely larger group who have to study and sit in seance and grow and develop. A lot of it has to be in discussions and so forth. The moral, the ethical, the spiritual implications of their thought. Because again, if grant you have your spiritual guides and your angelic loved ones, but whom are you drawing into your experience as a medium if you're not keeping they used to have what they call the gatekeeper in seances, where that soul, that spirit,
member of your spirit guides.
Of your spirit guides. Well, that's a wonderful thing, and it's I believe it happens today as much as it ever happened.
Yes, absolutely.
But you're to take some of the weight off of that poor soul and be your own guard, your own your own guidance system. Because ultimately, if you're going to be helping others, and you're going to be truly, for lack of a term, on the side of spirit, it can't just be rhetoric. It's got to be in the heart, in the soul, ultimately what we call the mind. And so, as I say, it's and it is like you were saying, and that's a beautiful thing, the garden of the mind. We don't seek, and that's a big mistake a lot of people make regardless. We don't seek perfection. We are dynamically seeking progress. And as long as you can see a little progress to the referral, that's why we depend on each other. That's why we go to church together.
That's right. The
That's
fellowship of
the
God.
fellowship, the community.
Mhm.
It's funny. I tell people this because I recognize its value, and it doesn't have to be your truth. I, of course, wanted for a number of years to become a Roman Catholic priest. And one of the things that I appreciated so deeply in my path of that teaching and that growth was the sacrament. I mean, it was considered sacred of confession.
Mhm.
And you find in different groups, whether it be, again, self-help groups like Alcoholics Anonymous and so forth, they have built into them opportunities for people to get together, whether it's in a group or just one-on-one, where they can be vulnerable to each other, where
Mm.
confidentiality is sacrosanct, and they can share what's really in their heart. Again, God is not mocked, or put it another way, spirit is not mocked. So when you have an opportunity and you maybe hit a wall, and you know that some of the things you think, say, or do are just, but you need help to, with someone else who may have been, who was there or even still is there, that kind of interaction, it doesn't happen very often. In fact, unfortunately, I know too many of my brothers and sisters who are practicing Roman Catholics who uh, do not take this powerful dynamic of confession and utilize it for their growth. Because what they, many times, I don't think they realize, at least this is my interpretation, is the absolution for those things that are on our consciences
Mhm.
is self absolution. You have to believe that this power that is greater than you are, God, if you will, has forgiven you. Now, obviously, that's the belief system speaks for itself, and it has its nuances. So I'm not here. I, I haven't the time to explain more of that. But the point is, we can do that.
Mhm.
In I remember there was I think this was maybe on YouTube or something, where they had a group of people meeting in a either a church or a social hall, and I think they even started meeting, believe it or not, in airport terminals. And all these people would do is each one would have like an 8 by 10 card, and on the card they would write what they wanted to talk about. And the one person said, "I physically abused my wife," or another person would say something to the effect of, "I am so incredibly lonely." And what happens is you've got basically 15, maybe 20 minutes to share what's on your heart based on what was on your uh, signage.
Mm.
And then the person would reflect back to you. And they say that groups like this are popping up all over. I'm not sure whether it was the Netherlands or, but again, one of the Scandinavian countries, if I may. And it was such a powerful message because to be able to say all it takes is, again, open hearted, open minded, and a vulnerability, knowing that love is ever present. And there are manifestations of that love, not just in the so called hereafter, not just in heaven, but right here on earth, if we look for them and are willing to be them.
That's an interesting social experiment. I think it would be better if it wasn't filmed and then put out everywhere. And
It
that,
wasn't.
but I can understand how it
But
would be,
yeah, they
if it
maintained
could
it.
be maintain their confidentiality and their true
Yeah,
vulnerability. So
yeah,
it's not just a clickbait energy of it all.
right,
That would be great. I
right.
can understand that.
Yeah. They
Yeah.
they handled it probably infinitely better and than I've described it.
Okay, good.
I really mean that. No,
Good.
because obviously I wouldn't go into an airport and say, you know, uh, I didn't feed the dog this morning, and let's talk about it. No, there was, you could tell that it was well planned,
Mhm.
and just by how people responded, people didn't feel like they were, again, there's a big difference between humbled
Yeah,
and humiliated.
that's it.
And if I may say one last thing regard that, Many of you probably are, we were talking about gratitude at Thanksgiving or Friendsgiving,
or for Christmas.
Christmas and so
Mhm.
forth. And I recently, I'm a big fan of, I believe he was 13th century. I could be wrong, so don't write me letters. But anyway, Meister Eckhart,
Okay.
famous Catholic theologian.
Mhm.
And the reason he was so famous is the church, unfortunately, did want to excommunicate and maybe burn him at the stake. But he was so popular and so beloved, they dare not touch him. So he died of natural causes. But regardless of that, he is noted as saying, if you but say thank you, that is prayer enough.
Mm.
So I wish
Simplicity.
I wish that people would, you know, search their soul, search their consciousness, and say, I'm so grateful that I'm who I am, where I am, and that I can, if I choose, to grow. Uh, because, like I said, the infinite is love.
Very much
And
so.
if we are grateful for that love, that's all we are, is grateful for the love. I still maintain, regardless of other political pundits in the world, that it's all going to come out all right. You heard it here first. I don't think you'll hear it here last.
Probably not. Well, this is a good point to tell people about your upcoming event that is on Saturday, December 27th at 7 o'clock.
Yep.
And it's an opportunity that happens either in person here at Lilydale at the Church of the Living Spirit Assembly Hall or online. So
Right.
this is something Ron does annually. So if you're thinking about what you would like to let go of in your thought patterns
Yeah.
and life and what you would like to put forth and manifest productively in your thinking, then this is that kind of a special event for you. So let's tell them more about your ceremonial event.
You cannot think a positive thought and a negative thought simultaneously. It's always a choice.
You could try.
You can try, and I have, and you can't do it. But regardless, the purpose of our gathering on December 27th at the Church of the Living Spirit, 7 p.m., we've called it historically for many, many years. I've been doing this for a very long time, and I'm honored, deeply honored to do it. Called our burning bowl ceremony. And it's born out of the idea that whatever it is that you have in your mentality, in your consciousness, if there are things there that no longer serve you, or things there that you want to be rid of for whatever reasons, for your growth, for your evolution, you have to reflect on those. And so we give people a chance there, or preferably if you can do it before you get there, to write what I call a spiritual laundry list of those things that irk you, annoy you, things that you know are not growth provoking in your psyche and your consciousness. And the reason it's called a burning bowl service is at the height of the service, there is a point where I will take, for lack of a better phrase, my laundry list, light it, and put it in a bowl that's full of sand. And then people will come up and do it again, and every until the very last person. Do you have to do it? No. You can sit there and enjoy the service. You don't have to participate in that part of the service. But it is born out of the metaphysical axiom, out of my consciousness, it moves out of my life. Okay. And at the end of that, and it all, goes into a, smoldering, burning heap of ashes, we then we use affirmative prayer to affirm that it is a time of great joy because we have released the negative and we are gloriously anticipating and grateful for all the good that is coming in the coming year. In my congregation now, I've kind of switch things around a little bit. I wanted to be a little more dramatic. So we now call it the fire communion. But for years here in Lilydale and other venues that I've had the privilege of serving, it's always been known as the burning bowl ceremony. Got very popular, by the way, early on in years in the Unity Church and other New Thought churches. But um, dear friend of mine, many years ago, she's passed away. The Reverend Shirley Smith, whom is a rock solid idol here in Lilydale, uh, taught me this service, and I began doing it when I was the minister of Plymouth Spiritualist Church in Rochester, New York, in the '80s, and it always brought a cathartic experience. People cried. You heard a lot of deep sighs because they gave themselves permission to let go and then to accept the love, the peace, and the power that has always been waiting to rain upon them eternally. So it's going to be on the 27th, a little bit close to Christmas. So if you can't be there because you're going to be chewing on a turkey leg with family and friends for a Christmas holiday, you shall be missed. But if you're available, and again, weather permitting, we don't want anybody to come out in bad weather because we don't want anyone hurt.
And the church will keep that notification on the Facebook page.
Absolutely.
If for some reason
absolutely. And therefore you can you can still participate if you choose on Zoom. And what you would do on Zoom, you'd have what I used to do years ago if I couldn't make something like this, I'd have an ashtray and my list and a little votive candle in the ashtray. And when it came time to incinerate those things that no longer served me, I would do it that way. And many people do that. But again, if the weather is good, we definitely would love to see you and to have that communal understanding and that communal upliftment that it always is.
And it's a perfect thing to do just before the start of the new year.
Yeah.
You're cleaning your slate from 2025, moving into 2026, into the new year, a new season of your life, if you let it be. And so we have to let those things go so we make room for the new. It's like when I have to say, hey, how about we clean out the closets and clean out the cupboards of your
that's a perfect in a sense
more room for other things.
In a sense, that's a perfect metaphor because unfortunately, and we see it in all of our lives, we hold on to the dross, to the stuff that doesn't serve.
We've outgrown.
Yeah, and it's a human psychological tendency because it's known. You've heard the expression, I hate to use it, but you've heard it. Better to stick with the devil you know than to look for the devil you don't know. And the point is, when we release all that, we suddenly realize there is no devil and there is no, nothing to harm us or cajole us in any way. We realize that we have just opened the gates for, again, our healing, our growth. And these are times too, we have people come to the service and they'll have a list from a loved one who maybe is infirm and couldn't come to the service or, is very long away and couldn't make it on Zoom. And they'll light for that person. They'll pray for the benefit of that person. There is power in that what? Thought.
Right.
And that's the truth.
Beautiful. So yes, please, if you can, if you desire or can attend that event, it's available in person or online at the Church of Living Spirit. And I think it's a beautiful way to represent the power of thinking into your life. You're thinking into the new year, the new aspect of yourself.
Yep.
And any last thoughts you wanted to share with folks today about that power of thinking into your life?
Lobsters can be sent to post office box number. That's a joke between a variety of congregations and me. I'll spare you that for the moment. But anyway, no, I just think, just as a minor addendum, again, I cannot be serious enough to and joyful enough to wish you all the most blessed holidays in however you keep Christmas or Hanukkah or Kwanzaa or whatever. Recognize that we are all in this world together, trying to figure it out. But if we acknowledge our unity and work together with and hold mutual respect, hold mutual dignity, oh my gosh, we will live, I believe, to see a world that does indeed work for everyone. No one left behind, no exceptions. That's my prayer for you for this coming year. And again, I wish you all the most blessed of all holiday seasons.
Oh,
Thank you.
that's lovely. Thank you, Ron. We really appreciate you being on the show today to share about thinking into the life and also about the upcoming burning bowl ceremony that you're going to be facilitating. We're
Yeah.
so grateful that you do that every year. And
And I say, our lovely host has said that she's doing a wonderful workshop on some of the natural laws. If a lot of this is, as they say, Greek to you, that would be an excellent jump start. She's an All right, I'm gonna make her head big. She's an excellent teacher because her heart is in the right place, and she will guide you through this process. And as Elton Brown, that great philosopher, says, you shall be rewarded.
that's so sweet. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
And yes, if anyone wants to know anything more about living the laws, that's a 6-week Zoom journey. And whether you're a spiritualist or not, if you want to know how to actually apply spiritual natural law, not just think about it in a book, you're going to take it out of theory, put it into practice, because spiritualism is about embracing that philosophy and living that philosophy. And I want to make it accessible to all of you.
Yep.
And I hope that you could join us for that special event. Also, I almost forgot to mention my new circle series round will start at the end of January as well. So if you are interested in developing your mediumship, giving and receiving messages in a partnered place, there's a lesson each week, an opportunity to go into breakout sessions. It's a Zoom class. I have students from all over the country and the world that join in on that special mediumship development circle series. And if you are ready and wanting to give and receive messages and really see how spirit works with you and how you can give readings to others, then that's the place to be. All right. Well, lots to look forward to for the end of this year and into the new year. Have a very Merry Christmas, everyone.
Yes,
We thank you for spending this time with us, and we'll be back for more another time.
absolutely. Thank you.
All
Thank you
right.
very much.
Thanks, everyone. God bless. Bye bye.